June 23, 2018. Chiang Rai Province, northern Thailand. 12 boys and their football coach entered Tham Luang cave, the way they had done before, casually, with no particular plan, the way teenagers enter anywhere they've been and come back from without incident. They left their shoes outside. By the time anyone thought to look for them, the monsoon had arrived 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The entrance was gone. In its place, a wall of black water moving upward at a rate that made every calculation about time meaningless. What followed would be called a miracle by every major outlet that covered it. What they didn't cover, not really, were the 17 days before that miracle, what it cost, and who didn't make it back out. As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. Tham Luang is not a famous cave. It doesn't appear in tourist guides. It has no lighting, no designated path, no emergency infrastructure of any kind. It is roughly 10 kilometers of narrow limestone passages carved beneath the mountains locals call the Sleeping Lady. The legend says a pregnant princess died there, waiting for a soldier who never came back. The mountain is her body. The cave is her grief. Local children had been warned about Tham Luang their entire lives. Specifically about one thing, the monsoon. When the rains come, the cave floods. Not slowly, not predictably. The water comes from everywhere at once, seeping through the rock above, rushing through passages that have no exits, filling chambers that have no air pockets. The locals called it the season when the mountain breathes in. June 23rd was supposed to be dry. The forecast said dry. It had been dry for weeks. Ekapol, known to everyone as Coach Ek, was 25 years old. He had been coaching the Wild Boars under-16 football team for 2 years. The boys trusted him completely. He was the kind of coach who remembered birthdays and showed up when parents didn't. 4 of the boys on that trip had no families to speak of. For them, Coach Ek was the closest thing. The youngest player was 11. The oldest was 16. There were 12 of them total. They planned to go in, walk to a chamber about a kilometer from the entrance, a spot they'd visited before, and come back out before dark. Standard time, 2 hours, maybe 3. They didn't bring food. They didn't bring extra lights. One boy brought a birthday cake in a plastic bag for a teammate celebrating that day. At approximately 6:30 p.m., someone standing outside the cave entrance noticed the water. By then, the boys were already too deep inside to hear anything but the sound of it rising. The boys reached their usual chamber and stopped. Somewhere behind them, back toward the entrance, back toward the shoes they'd left outside, the sound had changed. Water. Moving fast. Moving toward them. Coach Ek made a decision that, in the moment, was the only logical one. Go deeper. The passages ahead were higher. If the water was coming from the entrance, the safest ground was further in. They moved. What Coach Ek didn't know, what no one outside a handful of Thai geological surveys knew, was that Tham Luang's water doesn't come from one direction. It comes from above, from the sides, from fissures in the rock so small you couldn't fit a hand through them. The cave doesn't flood like a bathtub fills from a tap. It floods the way a sponge releases, from everywhere simultaneously, with no warning and no logic. Moving deeper didn't put them above the water. It put them further from the exit. By midnight, the entrance was completely submerged. 6 meters of water covered the mouth of the cave. The shoes the boys had left outside were gone. Outside, a 25-year-old assistant coach named Noparat had gone back to look for them. He found the bicycles first, then the bags, then the water where the entrance used to be. He called the parents called the police called the provincial governor. By 10 p.m. there were 17 people standing in the rain outside a cave, staring at black water with no equipment and no plan. The first dive team arrived at 3 a.m. They got 4 meters in before the current pushed them back. Visibility, 0. Water temperature, cold enough to matter, passage width, at points, barely enough for one person moving slowly with no gear. They tried twice more, before dawn. Each time, the water won. In due time, the world would send its best cave divers to this mountain. But that first night, there was nobody. Just parents, rain, and a cave that had stopped giving anything back. Inside, the boys had found a narrow rock shelf, about 4 kilometers from the entrance. A place called Pattaya Beach, named by whoever mapped it years ago with dark humor. It was barely large enough for all 13 of them to sit without touching the water. The ceiling was low, the air was breathable, but only just. Coach Ek told them to stay calm. He told them help was coming. He told them to sit still and conserve oxygen because he understood, even then, that the air in a sealed, underground chamber is not unlimited. The boys did what he said. They sat. They waited. One of them ate some of the birthday cake. They had no food, no clean water, only what dripped from the walls, which they caught with their hands and drank without knowing what was in it. No way to signal, no way to know if anyone was looking, no way to know if the water around them was still rising. What they didn't know was that above them, separated by 4 kilometers of flooded passage and 400 meters of solid rock, an entire country was beginning to panic. And the water was still rising. By day 3, the Thai government had made the rescue a national priority. The army arrived. Then the Navy SEALs. Then international dive teams. British, Australian, American, Chinese. Pumping equipment appeared, generators, tents, a field hospital that nobody wanted to need, but everyone knew might be necessary. The mountain above the cave became a city overnight. Hundreds of workers drilling shaft after shaft through solid rock, trying to find a passage that connected to the chamber where the boys might be. Drone operators scanning thermal imaging across the mountainside. Engineers calculating water tables and drainage rates and oxygen levels in spaces they couldn't access. None of it was working. The divers kept going in. Every day, pushing further. Every day the water pushed back. The passages narrowed to widths that required removing equipment, pushing it ahead, squeezing through blind, then reassembling in the dark. In places, visibility dropped to zero, not dim, not murky, but absolute zero, where a diver's hand pressed against their own mask was invisible. On day 3, a former Thai Navy SEAL, named Saman Gunan, volunteered to join the operation. He was 38 years old, retired, in excellent physical condition. He had come back specifically for this. He knew the risks. He went in anyway. What the rescue teams didn't realize was that the most dangerous section of the cave wasn't the deepest part. It was a passage about halfway in, a section they had already passed through multiple times and categorized as manageable. They were wrong. On July 5th, day 12, British cave divers John Valanthan and Rick Stanton pushed past every previous penetration point and kept going. They had been diving caves for decades. Tham Luang was unlike anything they had encountered, not because of any single feature, but because of the combination, the current, the silt, the temperature, the distance, the zero visibility, and the absolute uncertainty about what was ahead. 4 kilometers in, Valanthan's dive light caught something on the rock shelf above the waterline. Movement. He surfaced. 13 faces stared back at him from the darkness. Thin, pale, eyes reflecting the light like animals caught in the open. Valanthan looked at them for a moment. Then he said the only thing that made sense to say, "How many of you?" One of the boys answered in English. 13. Valanthan checked his watch. The boys had been inside for 9 days. They were alive. They were coherent. And they were 4 kilometers from the exit, through a flooded cave that had already almost killed experienced divers multiple times. Finding them was not the end of the story. In many ways, it was where the hardest part began. The rescue teams, now faced a problem with no clean solution. Option 1. Teach the boys to dive and bring them out through 4 kilometers of flooded passage. The problem? None of them knew how to dive. Several couldn't swim. The youngest was 11. The passages were tight enough that an adult diver in full equipment had to maneuver carefully. A panicking child in a flooded tunnel in zero visibility, 4 kilometers from air. The calculation was not good. Option 2. Wait for the water levels to drop enough to walk out. The monsoon was still active, the pumps were working, but the mountain was absorbing rain faster than the pumps could remove it. Estimates varied, weeks, possibly months. Option 3. Drill down from above. The shaft teams had been working for days. Every borehole they sank hit either solid rock or the wrong chamber. The mountain was not cooperating. Option 4. Leave oxygen tanks throughout the cave. Keep the boys supplied with food and medicine, and wait. This was the option the Thai government publicly committed to. It was also the option that cave diving experts, speaking privately, considered the most likely to end badly. There was a 5th option. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. Sedate the boys, put them in wetsuits and full face masks, carry them through the cave unconscious. The problem with that option was straightforward. If a sedated child's mask flooded at any point in those 4 kilometers, there was nothing anyone could do. This shift changed everything. Because within 48 hours, that 5th option, the one nobody wanted, became the only one left on the table. The decision was made on July 7th, day 14. An Australian anesthesiologist named Richard Harris, a cave diver who also happened to be a doctor, a combination so specific to this situation that some people later called it fate, assessed each boy individually. He calculated dosages by weight, ketamine for sedation, atropine to reduce secretions that could block an airway underwater. Each child would be under for approximately 40 minutes. 40 minutes was longer than the dive should take. It was also long enough that if anything went wrong, there would be no waking them up in time. Harris made clear to the Thai officials what he was agreeing to. He was not guaranteeing outcomes. He was agreeing to try. If a child died during extraction, he understood he might face criminal liability in Thailand. He went in anyway. The extraction happened over 3 days. 4 boys on day 1, 4 on day 2, 4 on day 3, plus Coach Ek last. The protocol was exact. Sedation administered inside the cave, child wrapped in a rescue sling, passed hand to hand through the tightest passages by divers stationed at intervals, floated through the flooded sections face up with a diver controlling the airway, transferred to the next team, then the next, 4 kilometers in near total darkness, until they surfaced at the entrance and were handed to the medical teams, waiting outside. 13 times it worked. What the world celebrated on July 10th. The image of ambulances leaving the mountain, the boys alive, the mission complete, was the last 3 hours of a 17-day story that most coverage collapsed into a single paragraph. The part that didn't make the celebrations. On July 6th, one day before the extraction began, Saman Gunan was returning through the cave after delivering oxygen tanks to the chamber where the boys were waiting. He lost consciousness in the passage that had been classified as manageable. His dive partner tried to revive him. It was too late. Saman Gunan died 4 kilometers underground, alone except for one other diver in the dark, in water, doing something he had volunteered to do for children he had never met. The boys were told about his death after they were evacuated. Not before. The decision was deliberate. The rescue teams worried that the knowledge would break something in the boys that needed to stay intact for them to survive the extraction. But Coach Ek knew. He had been told during one of the supply dives. He spent the final days in that cave carrying that information alone, sitting with 12 boys who were counting on him to stay calm, knowing that a man was dead because of where they were. He never told them. He kept teaching them to meditate instead, kept telling them to breathe slowly, kept rationing the small amounts of food the divers brought in, making sure the youngest ate first. When he finally emerged from the cave on July 10th, he was the last one out. He had lost 8 kilograms. He was immediately taken to hospital. In the press conference that followed, the boys were cheerful and cooperative and said the right things. They were teenagers. They understood on some level what had happened. On another level, they were 17 days older than when they walked in, and the full weight of it, the man who died, the 50 days of medical quarantine, the nightmares that would come later, was still somewhere ahead of them. One journalist asked Coach Ek what he would say to Saman Gunan's family. He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said he would spend the rest of his life trying to deserve it. Saman Gunan was buried with full military honors on July 14, 2018. He was 38 years old. He had no children. Coach Ek entered a Buddhist monastery shortly after the rescue. He spent several months as a monk, a traditional Thai way of making merit for someone who died. He said it was the only thing he knew how to do. The cave has been closed to the public ever since. There are plans to turn it into a museum. Whether that will ever happen is still unclear. The mountain doesn't seem particularly interested in becoming a monument. 12 boys walked into Tham Luang on a dry afternoon with a birthday cake and no particular plan. What came out 17 days later looked like them, moved like them, answered to the same names. Whether it was entirely them is a question none of them have answered publicly. Some things that happen underground stay there. If this story stayed with you, the full version, not the headline, subscribe. Every week we go back into the events that history compressed into a single sentence and find out what was actually inside them. The next one is already waiting.